Number 1. My name's Chloe. I'm from a small town called Belfast, and this is my horror story. There is a small getaway place called Ganaway, and it is about an hour, maybe 2, outside of Belfast. And what it is an activity centre and kinda like a hotel type of place. One thing you need to know about this place is that it is surrounded by woods and there's no population near this building. I went on a trip here with a group of friends and we went exploring through the woods. We will call them Macy and Oliver. We were about halfway through the woods when we heard this low growl. We all looked at each other and Oliver said it was probably nothing to worry about, but I could tell by his face that it was. We continued walking through the woods when we heard the branches snapping. By this stage, it was around 8 p.m. and we weren't allowed out in the woods because they used it for an army training workshop. Macy and I both looked at Oliver and asked him what to do, and he told us to hide. But as he said this creature growled really loud and it scared all of us, so we just started running. But we made the mistake of going different ways. I ended up lost in the woods. All I could see was trees and more trees. Then I heard the growl, and it sounded like really heavy footsteps coming towards me. So I quickly climbed a tree. This tree was quite tall, so I got up to 10 feet of the ground, and I was looking for where this growling noise was coming from. And my eyes had just adjusted to the darkness, and I see it. This creature was very tall and skinny. It was all black. I was shaking and crying to myself, but just as it was going to walk past, I slipped off the tree and I yelled, and this creature looked up at me, and its face is a face. I could never ever forget its eyes. They were red and it was smiling at me. It started to climb up the tree when a gun went off. It was the owner. It turned out that Macy and Oliver had gotten out of the woods and gotten help. The creature dropped down to the ground and growled while running away. I sat in the tree just crying while the owner tried to convince me to come down. When I finally came down, we walked back to his office, and he told us that we should have never went into the woods in the first place. But he let us go with a warning and told us we could leave in the morning since it was like almost 10 at night at this point. Me and Macy were sharing a room, whereas Oliver was up the stairs in the boy area. Macy didn't want to talk about what happened, and I didn't either, but she had fallen asleep. As I was laying in bed, I heard tapping on the window, and it wouldn't stop. It felt like hours. I had lay there and listened to the tapping. It finally came morning, and we have never left somewhere so fast in all our lives. All I can say is don't go into the woods at night. Number 2. Hello all. This is my first post. I had such a weird morning. though I just couldn't resist. This is a true story. Hopefully, we'll be updated if anything new occurs. I live in a historical dorm building in the Northwest, here in the US. Living on the 5th floor of this 100-year-old structure with no freaking elevator, I might add. The building is shaped like a U, and my windows face another dorm room across the way. I have been sleeping really bad recently, going to bed around 3 a.m. and waking up at 10 a.m. for class. I've never met my neighbor, never made eye contact with my neighbor. He was a male with heavy curtains he always closes at dusk and is open when I wake up. Today, I woke up really early, just walking by a weird dream I can't remember. I sat up in bed, and my bed somewhat faces the window where I can see the other window of my neighbor. It's not directly in front of it, and I have things sitting in my window so that I can't see all of their window and they can't see me in my bed. My windows are always fogged. I liked it that way, so no one can really look into my room clearly. There are 5 freaking windows in my studio room, and many opportunities to look into them. So I wake up, feeling groggy from not a ton of sleep. I saw movement in the window across the way, and my neighbor is opening their curtains. Someone instinctively hid, so they couldn't see me watching them, but I could see him. He opened his curtains like something from a dramatic movie, both hands just splitting them down in the middle. And then, things got a bit weird. He opened the window curtains, and then he just stood there. It's like he froze. I watched him in the corner of my window. He wasn't making eye contact, but he just stared into my room, frozen. I sat there frozen as well, and we both stayed like that for 5 minutes. Suddenly, he breaks his daze and turned away and walked out of my view. I stayed in bed for a while, still tired as it was about 7 a.m., and I was like, what just happened? I got up, made coffee, and sat back in bed. I watched some YouTube videos with my coffee and just chilled out and forgot about the weird start to my day. I caught a glimpse of something in my window, and I look up and notice 3 streak marks that were definitely not there earlier this morning. With my windows being fogged all the time, probably from the heat inside my room and the humidity of outside, I realized that these 3 marks were new, and it was the same window pane I was watching my neighbor this morning. It's in the upper corner of the window. Nothing can touch it easily, such as the curtain or the objects in my lower window. I realized it was the same place my neighbor was staring at this morning. I didn't want to get up and check on it because I already knew what it was deep in my stomach. It looked like long fingers, just 3 fingers. I pushed the thought out of my mind and went back to finishing coffee. I couldn't help but look again after I got up to put my coffee cup in the kitchen. As I passed the window, I noticed a new development. There were now streak marks coming from the top of the finger marks on my window and dragged across the entire window very lightly. I immediately called my mom, and she freaked out and thought there was an intruder at first, but I reassured her. No one had been in my room. She then asked if it was from the outside or inside of my window. I went up to it and slowly touched the marks. They were from the inside. I ruined the marks by doing this, which still bothers me. She told me to clean my windows and see if it happens again. I did so. It will see if it occurs again. Did the neighbor see something in my window? Something that was clearly not physically there in the room with me. But it seems like they saw something, or maybe they were in a trance of sorts. I'm not sure. Let's see what happens. Not sure I can sleep tonight. Number 3. This is a short story about something that none of us could explain. I've been working in the same electronics store for about a year now. It's a big store with 2 floors. We sell just about everything: household appliances, computers, TVs, cell phones, cables, vacuum cleaners. You name it, we sell it. Everything here has always been normal. Nothing odd has ever happened as long as I've been here. I have never heard any stories about anything out of the ordinary. I mean, it's a store. We do get robbed from time to time. But I suppose I'll count that as normal too. But this was until about a month ago. Usually, I work the closing shift. We close the store at 8 p.m. After closing, there's 3 of us that has to stay until 8:30 in case someone tries to get in after closing or something. 1 salesman, 1 storeman, and a cashier. That's me. This has never happened since I started working here. But it's policy, so we stay. Anyway, about a month ago, I was giving thumbs up that all customers were out of the store and that I could begin my little closing procedure. I was done closing the counter at about 8:20. I had counted all the money and put everything back in the safe. I locked up and went downstairs to the staff room. Like I said, normally we're only 3 at this point. But I found a group of my co-workers gathered around our surveillance monitors. I heard them muttering something like, "What, there's still a person in here? Like, what the fuck?" They usually do a thorough check before we start locking up everything. So I went to the group of people gathered and I took a look for myself. Yes, there she was, a woman who was still walking around on the ground floor of the store, looking at stuff in the dark. One of my co-workers went back out on the floor to talk to her and tell her that the store was closed and that she had to leave. We saw her react to the sound of the staff room door open. He came back a while later and told us that he couldn't find her. He had looked around everywhere and yelled out for her, but there was nothing. At this time, we could no longer see her on any of the monitors, so we decided to go out to look for her. All but one. We were 11 people. We split up with 5 people searching each floor, and 1 stayed inside the staff room to keep an eye on the monitors. We searched for what felt like forever, but we all came back empty-handed. She just wasn't there. We started discussing if there was any way she could have gotten out, but both her entrance and exit were locked, and anywhere else you need a key card with a personal code to get in. We checked the staff room too, just to be sure, but she was nowhere to be found. The guy who'd stayed in the staff room hadn't heard or seen anything since we left. It was just so weird. Were we going nuts? If there's no one there, then what the hell did we see on the monitors? We all saw her. All of us. Number 4. My name is Daniela. I've been experiencing some beyond strange experiences the past week, so let me fill you in. Have you ever felt that something or someone watching you? The way your skin prickles at the feeling, the gut-wrenching panic of eyes watching your every move, the way your hair stands on end and for a moment you feel vulnerable. Because although you know you're stronger than whatever faces you, you not being able to see the person scanning your every move is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I ask you this because it's relatable, whether you like it or not. Well, that is barely a scratch on the surface of what I have been feeling the past week. Let me take you back to Wednesday. I had woken up at the peak time of 7 a.m. My alarm was as annoying as usual, and I had slapped it off like any ordinary human being. It seemed darker than usual in my room, but I ignored it. Winter is near, and it's an unexpected thing for the sun to rise later. As I had slugged out of my bed and quickly got ready for the work, I grabbed an apple and I left my condo. The apartment building was deserted at this time, but that was not unusual. I tend to be the first to wake and leave the building, as well as the last to arrive after work. I was just busy all day, every day, so I rarely saw my neighbors. But today, I just felt strange about the eerie silence. It's normally quiet, but it was never this quiet. I had shrugged my shoulders in response to my raging thoughts and left the building. Whatever was going on in those apartments was none of my business. I had arrived to work, and my day carried on like any ordinary day. I had to deliver files to the manager, send emails to his directors, warning them that the computers were shutting down, and I had my typical break at the coffee shop across the road. My work had begun slightly slow, due to the complications of the useless computers, but overall it has gone by pretty quick and without a problem. As I returned back from my break, an IT van caught my attention in the car park. The van was stalling on the side entrance. The van was still running, as the lights had not been turned off, and I could hear the slight vibrations of the engine. It was still dark outside, so the light was obviously difficult to ignore. I was confused. I didn't understand why the male or female who were parked there, doing nothing when they knew that the computers had to be fixed immediately. If we didn't get those computers starting again, our system could get easily overrun. That just wasn't an option, as a lot of the files held on our laptops, computers, held private information on our customers. That info just couldn't be tampered with. I had weighed my options and chose the latter of heading towards the van and knocking on the window to alert the driver. Maybe they had fell asleep. The window was dark and I couldn't see anything on the inside. Only an outline of a figure could be seen moving about in the driver's seat until the window was pulled down. This same feeling from this morning rose up into my throat. I had blamed it on the cold chill of the November air before speaking to the shadowed face. I had mumbled hastily, desperate to return to the comfort of my office building. "Hello? I see you're IT. If you would like to go through the side entrance, the security will take you where you need to go." The IT male, the broadness of his shoulders, and the strong scent of his deodorant had strung my nostrils when speaking to him, which could clearly show he was a male, had only knobbed before the squeak of the window had been rolled up again. He remained in his van and continued to stare out of the window at me. I had rushed away, a sense of discomfort tingling my toes, as I could feel the eyes of the stranger when I walked. Whoever that guy was, he gave me the creeps. I have attempted to push that small encounter to the back of my mind, because every time I thought about it, the feeling of anticipation and dread set on me. But I just couldn't deal with that now. I had a job to do, and so I continued finishing the files on my desk. It had been a good hour or so, and the encounter had been completely forgotten until my manager called me and my other co-workers into his office. I had walked in, prepared to talk about how the computer system will be rebooted, and that we would have to work on paper until they had fully set up. My manager Jordan had paced around his office before speaking to us all. The IT people haven't showed up yet, as they have all their workers sent off to the other buildings, like our own. I have just got off the phone from their manager, and they should be sending some people early tomorrow morning. Until then, please work with the paper files. I was confused, genuinely confused. How could they not have enough workers if I had just met one outside not long ago? After leaving the office, an idea had popped into my head. Maybe not a great one, but an idea overall. Like any curious person, I walked to the security section of our building, where the footage of the cameras could be seen. I had slid my pass across the keypad before entering the walking towards the laptop, showing the footage of the side entrance of the building. The camera number was written in the corner of the screen, 258. I skipped the footage to a few hours ago, when I had my break and met the stranger sat in his van. However, when I had scrolled around the times of when the van approached, the side entrance remained deserted. There was no footage of the van pulling up to the side entrance of our building. There was just me, who walked into the view of the camera and straight through the side entrance without a fault in my step. It was as if the past event never happened. But how would that be possible? Number 5. Happened to a friend I know. She is living alone in her apartment, and late one night, she has a guy friend over. He sits on her bed when he suddenly decides he wants to eat tandoori chicken. It was 12 at night, so she was confused and said, "Can't we get some tomorrow?" He insists that they get some that night and pull her out of her apartment without taking the keys. She got angry and said, now they were stuck outside for the night. Well, he tells her, "Call the cops, there is someone under your bed." Cops came and caught the guy. He was stalking her and had been hiding under her bed for God knows how much time. Number 6. The first rule of being cliché is living a cliché-filled type of life. Life is so full of clichés, don't you think? And especially with the type of stories and entertainment we get forced to watch and listen, as well as to drown our minds into death with. This story is also going to be one of those cliché type of stories where the obvious causal link ends with an obvious result. I mean, have you ever watched something so cliché and predictable that it made you look like some sort of physic? I mean, I have. I want to first talk about a creature or some higher being called the cliché man. The cliché man always feeds off clichés, really, which I am sure most of you could have guessed straight away, and I am sure you have also realized that the cliché man gets stronger when in a clichéd environment. I had a pretty normal life, with a wife and 2 children, and while I was the main breadwinner of the household, my wife took care of the kids and the house. Life was pretty good, in the normal good family sense of the word, and I also managed to take my family out on holidays, family days out to restaurants, and so on. So we were a pretty clichéd family to start off with, which attracted the cliché man, which I am sure you lot could have predicted easily. In the first couple of weeks leading up to the cliché man invading my life, I started getting so many so-called physics following me around everywhere and telling me my future and the future of my family. It was things like my wife will start having an affair, and I must follow the rules of being cliché, and I would have to murder my wife and her lover. I thought they were crazy. But one day, while I was on my break in the office, I got a phone call of my wife saying that she had an affair with another man in our own bedroom. I honestly didn't know what to think or feel about any of it, but my wife then said, "You have got to follow the rules of being cliché and murder me and my lover." The third rule of being cliché is my marriage and what I have always known and loved going bad. Then I came home to find out that my wife and her new lover were in our bed, prepared to be killed by me. I wasn't even angry or furious, just highly confused and freaked out. There was a knife outside our bedroom door, and I saw both my wife and her lover just smiling at me, waiting to be killed by me. Because that's what usually happens when a husband finds his wife with another man in their own bedroom. Look, you two, I don't know what the rules of being cliché are, but I am going back to work, I told my wife and her lover, and both of them looked so disappointed and angry with me for disobeying the rules of being cliché made by the cliché man. "Daddy, you must follow the rules of being cliché, because if you don't, then the cliché man will be angry," my 2 sons told me, and I didn't notice before that they were both behind me. Fourth rule of being cliché is some weird paranormal ability being performed on you to force you to do something against your will. Because out of nowhere, my mind swapped with my wife's mind, and I was in her body and she was in mine. My wife then threatened me, while in my body, that if I don't follow the rules of being cliché, then she will take over my body forever, after killing her body with my mind inside it. I desperately decided that I will murder her and her lover if my mind could go back into my body, and it did. Obviously, I'm sure you lot have guessed by now that my family's mind has been taken over by the cliché man. How predictable, right? As I was back in my own body, I ran over to my wife and stabbed her to death, and then I murdered her lover. My 2 sons ran over to me and hugged me, and shouting in joy, "Well done, father. The cliché man will be so pleased you followed the rules of being cliché and predictable." Fifth, the 5th rule of being cliché is having your close one affected by a tragic incident. The ages of my sons are 13 and 15, and the obvious next phase of my 2 sons seeing me murder their mother is that they go goddamn crazy and start acting out. I put the bodies of my wife and her lover down in the cellar, where we keep a larger freezer which could fit both their bodies. That year, my 2 sons started behaving badly and getting into trouble, and whenever I question them about it, my son's reply will be, "It's the rules of being cliché. Youngsters like us who have witnessed something terrible go crazy and start acting out because we have something bottled up," my sons would tell me. Then I heard my wife calling me from downstairs into the cellar from the freezer. "Stan, you should understand the rules of being cliché by now." My dead wife's body would shout out from the cellar freezer, and I would shake in fear. "Yes, honey," I replied shakily. Sixth, the 6th rule of being cliché is always having some outside hearing something, seeing something, and knowing something. Now, in these sort of situations, there is always predictably some sort of friend, colleague, or family member who notices something strange or saw something and heard something. Guess what? That is what exactly happened when my next-door neighbors came over to meet me. Without any friendliness or anything to break the ice, they instantly start talking about the rules of being cliché and what their role is going to be. They were the ones to go to the police to report to them about me and the disappearance of my wife. Then, this is where I get eventually arrested, and my 2 sons go into care and get mental health treatment. I was against everything and didn't want to be part of this cliché or follow any stupid rules belonging to cliché. Seventh, the 7th rule of being cliché is eventually being stuck in some horrible situation which you cannot escape and cannot break out of. Then my mind swapped with my dead wife's body, and it was so cold and empty. I couldn't even shiver, cry, or shout for help. I could hear my wife in my body and enjoying herself being warm and being able to move around again. She came down while inside my body, and she basically said to me, "The cliché man will let you back in your body if you promise to follow the rules of being cliché." And I desperately and cowardly agreed, and how cliché of me that is. I am back in my body, and my next-door neighbors have gone to the police, and I have hugged and kissed my boys goodbye forever. I am so sorry if this story has been so cliché and predictable. Hey there, and thank you so much for listening. If you have any stories that you want me to read, you can send them to my email. Also, if you liked this video, don't forget to thumbs up and comment, cause it will help my channel a lot. And I will see you all in my next video.